to the Armageddon TV YouTube channel. The pressure from the Ukrainian armed forces is increasing as Russian President Vladimir Putin enters a major stalemate for Ukraine. The Ukrainian army is raining long-range missiles on Russian columns in order to liberate the areas that Russia has occupied since the first days of the war. In particular, the Kherson counterattack, launched a little over a month ago, continues to yield results. While the Ukrainian armed forces continues its advance in the south, Russia has been seriously worried about the lack of manpower and ammunition. This shortcoming in the Russian army is growing day by day. We will cover this subject in more detail later in our video. But let's start by examining the latest developments together. According to the report published by the Ukrainian Southern Operational Command, the Ukrainian Air Force hit 5 Russian strongholds in the southern region. The Ukrainian armed forces attacked 3 Russian strongholds in the Berislav region and 2 more Russian strongholds in the Kherson region. The Russian army counterattacked in the Berislav region in order to regain the lost territories. However, after the response of the Ukrainian armed forces, both attacks were unsuccessful. The command of the Ukrainian Air Force informed the Russian army, which was trying to counterattack, that 2 fighter jets and a bomber of the Ukrainian Air Force blew up the famous Russian stronghold in the Berislav region, and 2 Mi-8 and Mi-24 blew up 2 Russian strongholds in the Kherson region. At the same time, it is reported that the Mi-8 and Mi-24 warplanes of the Ukrainian Air Forces chased the attack helicopters of the Russian army in the region. Russian helicopters approaching to attack Ukrainian targets began to be tracked after being detected by Ukrainian warplanes, and the Russian helicopter had to tuck their tails and flee like a scaredy cat. At the same time, the most serious loss of the Russian army in the region is the cutting of logistics line. The logistics networks of the Russian army are blown up by US HIMARS and M270 multiple launch rockets in the Ukrainian army. The Russian ammunition, which was lost as a result of the successful attacks of HIMARS, cannot be replaced, and Putin is forced to proceed on a dark road in a train full of fear. But in general, there is still a perception in the international community that Ukraine cannot win. This perception must be broken because Ukraine can win this war. This is much better understood when the operations carried out by the Ukrainian armed forces in the last month are observed. Yes, that's true. Russia has made some progress in the Luhansk region of Donbas, captured Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. But then a great pause was observed in the attacks of the Russian army. The prevailing view around the world is that Ukraine cannot win the war. But this view is not entirely correct. In the war, whose 5th month we left behind, the Russians suffered great losses. Troops, artillery, tanks and planes of the Russian army were destroyed. However, they were still superior to Ukraine in these numbers. Besides, there is a perception that the West's support for Ukraine has stopped. The same growing disinterest in the West was experienced in Libya after the removal of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011 and in the conflicts in Syria and Yemen. As food and gas prices skyrocketed and inflation soared, many in the West began to say that Ukraine should accept its losses and make peace with Moscow, leaving the Donbas and Black Sea land corridor that connects it to Crimea, which Russia annexed in 2014. However, this is not an acceptable offer by the Ukrainian authorities. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky stated that they will liberate all the lands of Ukraine in a statement he made in the past weeks. Ukrainians say their strategy is working and they believe they can defeat the Russian invasion with enough Western weapons. They are not alone in this belief. The head of Britain's MI6 recently spoke at the Aspen Security Forum. He said in a rare Republic appearance that the Russian offensive was about to run out of power. The head of MI6 said in his statements that he thinks the Russians will have more and more difficulties in finding manpower and materials in the next few weeks. In fact, they think they can do it again, since Ukraine remains silent in the annexion of Crimea, with the offer to connect the coastline connecting the Russian border with the Donbas and Crimea from the west to Russia. But this time it's very different. Ukraine faces a threat to its very existence. In a written statement on this subject, the Ukrainian foreign minister said Russian President Vladimir Putin does not just want to buy more Ukrainian territory. His passions do not even cease to take control of the whole country. He wants to hollow out the Ukrainian nation and wipe our people off the map. both by murdering us and destroying the distinguishing features of our identity. So he's running a genocide campaign. But Ukraine's message does not find enough resonance in the West. Ukraine gradually began to regress to lower ranks even on the news pages. The attention given by the international community to this war is decreasing day by day. With the start of sports seasons, people are now returning to their own living standards. This is the opportunity that Putin has been waiting for. He thinks that if they can resist for the invasion of Ukraine until the international community becomes intensive to the issue, they can carry out much more severe attacks later on. He is aware that Ukraine will be helpless if the support of the West is cut off. The Ukrainians inflicted a lot of damage on the troops of the Russian army in the battle. But the few heavy artillery and missile launchers, while making their presence felt, are not enough to launch a convincing counterattack. Current Western support can lead to sufficiently strong attacks by Ukraine on Russian positions. The United States and the West supplied Ukraine with ample body armor, small arms and ammunition, and smaller handheld armor and anti-aircraft and anti-tank systems such as Javelins and Stingers. But they will need more and expect more of the HIMARS M142 and M270 to be sent to the region soon. Because with the arrival of these weapons in the region, the Ukrainian armed forces made a real difference for the first time. But the USA and the West frequently bring that they do not want to increase the tension with Russia. The nuclear threat posed by Russian President Vladimir Putin at the beginning of the war seems to remain valid to a certain degree. US President Joe Biden and French President Emmanuel Macron fell for it. Biden has repeatedly said he doesn't want any escalation, so he has limited shipments of weapons to Ukraine that can hit targets in Russia. Macron told the news media earlier this year that the West should not humiliate Russia and instead prepare an exit ramp for the country to end the war. But there are two very specific ways out of this war. Either Ukraine will win or Russia will win. Ukraine can win this war if they get the necessary support from the West. They show it anyway. The West really needs to believe that too. The number of those who still think that NATO's stance is only to weaken Russia's military power is quite high. There is a group of experts who think that this is the main purpose of the USA and the UK in particular. However, this is not exactly the case. Of course, the weakening of Russia's military power is important for the alliance, but the USA and UK have proven to us over and over again that they do not have such a goal. It would be a complete misconception to see Ukraine as a pawn or proxy warrior. At the moment, Ukraine has assured Russia that it will not join the alliance in front of the whole world. If the US and UK did not find Ukraine's faith and fight for freedom and democracy sincere, we are sure that they would be less supportive, although they are the guarantors of Ukraine's territorial integrity. However, Ukraine showed the seriousness of what it was fighting for to the whole world with its resistance against the Russian army. Even in the first month of the war, the Ukrainian army was able to repulse the Russian army, even though it did not have such advanced Western weapons. Here, the statements of the Ukrainian authorities are very critical. If Ukraine falls, the whole of Europe will be enslaved by a new dictatorial or autocratic regime. Ukraine is giving its main war for the protection of democracy and humanity, and especially the USA and UK give all their support to Ukraine in this direction. Also, let's not forget that Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia are the countries that give the biggest support to Ukraine's cause. These former Soviet countries in particular know the horrors of the Soviet era under Russian control. We hope that Ukraine regains the freedom and territorial integrity it deserves as soon as possible.